Okay. Hi, everybody. Happy Monday. This week, we're talking about what to do when your training isn't working. Your dog is taking treats and maybe even responding to cues, but they're still responding aggressively, reactive. You're seeing reactive behavior still um, in problem scenarios around triggers. So the last couple weeks, we talked about what to do if your dog isn't taking treats. And if you missed those, go ahead and look back on the blog. It's dogkindtraining.com/blog. And you can see how we talked about, why your dog might not be taking treats and how to troubleshoot that. But now we're assuming your dog is taking treats, but you're still stuck. You're still seeing some of this aggressive behavior. So that's what we're talking about today. If you have any questions or comments during the broadcast, I will see them if you put them in the comments wherever you're watching this. All right, let's jump in to the slides. And as always, I appreciate a thumbs up or a comment if you can hear or see me, just in case. All right. So why treats aren't working? I hear this a lot. People say, well, I tried positive reinforcement training and it didn't work. And of course, that can't really be true because, well, you could try to do positive reinforcement training and be unsuccessful. But if you're in fact doing positive reinforcement, then some behavior, hopefully the one that you were trying to reinforce, should increase in frequency. That's the definition of positive reinforcement. But there are situations in which that we'll cover this week and next week, where maybe you are even successfully positively reinforcing behaviors you want, but you're still getting behaviors you don't want. Is anyone in this situation already where you've got, I may have to go deal with that whining dog, where you've got a dog who will take treats and will respond to cues sometimes around their triggers, but is still barking, growling, or lunging as well? If that sounds like you, pop a comment under the video and I'd love to hear about it. Okay. And just a second, I will go put that dog in another room and be right back. All right, sorry about that. So I don't see any comments, so maybe that means none of you are struggling with this issue where your dog will take treats and respond to cues, but still having some reactive or aggressive behavior. But that's what we're talking about today. There are at least a couple common reasons for this problem. The one we're going to talk about today is when you've got conflicting motivations and multiple reinforcers in play. So here's the problem we're talking about today. Your dog is taking treats, so that's great. Congratulations, they are taking treats around their triggers, but they're still growling or lunging, reacting, doing those behaviors you don't like. And your dog isn't really getting better. At least you don't feel like your dog's getting better. So there are a few reasons that this could happen. The one we're talking about today is where you've got multiple motivations and multiple reinforcers going on in the same situation. Next week, we're going to talk about when you accidentally add positive reinforcement for behaviors you don't want. And this is fairly common as well. And this week and next week, we'll touch on, how can you tell if this might be going on with your dog, and then what do you do about it? So when she barks, I've got a couple of comments here. I think I'll save these till the end because then they'll show up on the screen better. But go ahead and keep leaving comments or questions, and I'll get to them at the end. So as always, when we're asking ourselves, why does my dog do this? We're going to look at our framework for addressing problem behaviors. And these are the three pieces that we look at to figure out where we can make changes to change behavior: the dog's motivation to do the behavior, the opportunity or the trigger, and then the consequence or what the dog gets out of the behavior. And the last couple weeks, we've been talking about behaviors that result in getting food. And this could be just take the behavior of taking a treat from your hand and chewing it. Or it could be, when you ask for a behavior and then the dog knows if I do this behavior, then I get a treat. So, what motivates behavior that results in getting food? Well, being hungry is one motivation. But we all know we don't have to be hungry to eat. So, the smell of food or just seeing food that you have a history with and is tasty can also motivate you to eat. Same with dogs. In the case where we are training our dogs with food, the opportunity for them to do some behavior to get food is kind of contingent on us. Either we just hand them food if we were trying to do something like classical conditioning or counter conditioning, or we ask them to do something. We give them a cue, and that signals to your dog that, oh, right now there's an opportunity to do this behavior, and then I can get food out of it. And then, of course, the consequence for behaviors that result in food is food. They get the tasty food, and maybe there's some decrease in hunger if they are really hungry. So those are the reinforcers. But in the case we're talking about today, you've got a dog who will do some behaviors to get food. They'll take treats from you. Maybe they'll do a sit or a look at you to get a treat, but they're still exhibiting reactive, aggressive, fearful behavior. That could be lunging, growling, barking. So we have to look at these three pieces for the problem behavior as well: the motivation, opportunity, and consequence. Now, the example I want to use today is a dog who is afraid of other dogs and is reactive to them on walks. So this could be anything, though. You could plug in your own motivations, at least what you think your dog's motivations are. In this example, we have a dog who finds other dogs scary when he sees dogs approaching, motivated to make them go away. The opportunity to try some of this reactive or aggressive behavior that the dog has learned will produce a desired consequence is when they see a dog, usually see a dog nearby or coming toward them. And in our case, because we've got a dog who does not like other dogs, the consequence that the dog is getting out of their reactive behavior is that that scary thing is going farther away. And, it doesn't really matter if your dog actually succeeded in driving a dog away by barking or lunging, or if you're just out on a walk. And of course, the other person who's walking their dog, they're going to keep moving. So either way, your dog's reactive behavior, in this example anyway, is being reinforced by that other dog continuing to move away. All right, so why is your dog taking food and maybe even doing behaviors you like when you ask and still reacting or growling, barking, whatever? Well, it's because you have both of these things going on at the same time. You have the old motivation, opportunity, and consequence, which is on the left here, that fearful dog, fearful of dogs, dog goes away. And you've just kind of added on top, in the same situation, some behaviors that get food for the dog. So to put kind of a finer point on it, you've got competing motivations going on at the same time for different reinforcers. And these consequences, that what we're assuming they're reinforcers, that's something that I think sometimes gets lost when I just say this is the consequence. When your dog does, say, sits for a treat, in theory, we think when you give them the treat, that's a reinforcer for sitting. Well, same thing for the reactive behavior. If your dog is afraid of other dogs, they bark and growl, the other dog moves away, that is reinforcing the reactive behavior. So you've got motivation, two different motivations here up top for two different reinforcers, and they can certainly be happening at the same time. So how can you tell if this is going on with your dog? How can you tell if your dog has conflicting or competing motivations? They want, two different things at least at once. They want food, but they also want whatever their aggressive or reactive behavior produces for them. And ideally, how can you tell before they react? Because remember, in a lot of cases, most of the time when your dog reacts, it's being reinforced by the environment somehow. like in the example where a dog barks at another dog walking by and they keep walking by, they move away. So we'd like to avoid that reactive behavior from happening in the first place so it doesn't continue to be reinforced. All right, so we are going to look at a little video of some behaviors that you can look for to try to identify whether or not your dog has got some competing motivations going on. Let me get rid of that. Okay, so these are just hints that your dog's experiencing conflicting motivations. You can't tell for sure by looking at a behavior what it looks like. You can't know for sure what the motivation is, but I think these are reasonable clues, and at least, will give you the idea that maybe I should try to change some things in my training to see if, they'll help. If I can reduce one of the motivations, will this help me? So one sign that maybe food isn't the only thing on your dog's mind, that they're worried about other things or thinking about other things, motivated by other consequences, is if they're inconsistently taking treats. Does anyone have this happen with your dog? So, you hand them a treat and sometimes they take it, sometimes they ignore it, sometimes they take it and then drop it. We have a little video here of a couple dogs in this situation. Here's little Grizzly when he was younger. You can see he's looking around. He's actually looking at triggers, and then he ate some chicken. But he can do both. He can look around at triggers and then eat chicken. And you'll see in a minute another situation. So he sees triggers. He turns away, moves away from the triggers, is offered chicken. So all he has to do right there is open his mouth and take chicken. It's a pretty low effort behavior. But and even dropped, he won't take it. He would rather move away from the triggers. So those are some two different motivations and two different reinforcers that are happening in the same walk. In one case, he was able to take the treat. He was motivated enough to take the food. In the other, he was more motivated to just move away from the trigger. Here's another one. Here's Coco taking some treats from mom's hand, looking around. Same walk, ignoring food. So obviously food is not the only motivator here, right? Coco has got something else motivating her to stare and move in that direction. So that makes training hard when you've got that, you're fighting against another strong motivator. And most of these dogs normally, they really love food, and these trainers are all using very high value food. So it's not like the food isn't good. Okay, another sign to look for that might indicate that your dog has got some conflict going on is if they won't take food from your hand, but they'll sometimes take it if you drop it. And I don't 100% know why this is. I've just seen it a lot. So let's look at some examples. Well, sometimes I know why it is. So right here, we have a really common example. And those of you who have dogs who are a little bit worried about strangers, this is something you might see a lot. And this, by the way, is not an ideal setup, but this is our little newly adopted dog, Pancake. And this was a few months ago. He was pretty scared of my husband. And you see my husband has his hand out with a treat on it. And he's doing a lot of things right. He's sitting down. He's not looking at Pancake. The hand is low, but Pancake is like, you can see he's interested in the food. And so there's some motivation to check out the food and maybe get it, but he is not willing to touch my husband's hand for it. So I said, just drop it. And now he'll take it. So that tells you that there were some competing motivations. And in that situation, the one to stay away from my husband, that motivation won out. Uh-oh. I just got a notice that I'm having a hard time streaming on Facebook. If you can still see me either on the business page or in the support group, please let me know. I'm not sure what's going on there. Oh, I see. It looks like it's just in the group. Let me see if I can make it work. Okay. All right, folks in the group probably can't hear or see me right now. I apologize. Hopefully they'll come on over to the business page. I'm not really sure what's going on. All right. If anyone is watching this on the business page and is also in the support group, if you could pop over there and just let them know this is still streaming on the business page so they can come over. It looks like about half the people watching were watching from the group. So actually, I might be able to do that really quickly. I'm not sure what's been going on with Facebook lately, but we've had a lot of glitches going live. Here, still live on biz page. Okay. All right, so that was an example of dogs. We're looking at examples of dogs not taking treats from hand, but on the ground. And why does this? In the case of my husband, it was clear why that would be, because Pancake's afraid of my husband's hand. But here, this is Coco. That's her mom. She trusts her. Not afraid of her, but she will not take a treat from her hand. She's turning her head away, but she would take a treat tossed onto the ground. There are a lot of reasons that could be, but it is a warning sign to me. It kind of falls under inconsistent taking of treats as well. Here's another one where Pancake would like that bully stick. So there's some conflict. He wants it, but the motivation to stay away from my husband is winning out. So now once it's on the ground, he can take it. All right. So we looked at inconsistently taking treats, not taking treats from your hand. Another sign that your dog has got some conflict going on, and this is why maybe your training isn't going so well. If your dog is taking treats hard, does anyone have that where your dog kind of snatches treats from your hands and it hurts? I think this often happens because dogs are trying to grab the treat quickly so they can go back to whatever the other behavior that they are currently wanting to do, often scanning for trouble. I don't have video of this, but I think you know what I'm talking about. So you're talking about a dog who normally, if they take treats relatively gently, and now it's starting to hurt when they take them from your fingers, that may be an indication that you've got some conflict going on. Stretching for treats is a big one, and this is more common, again, where you've got dogs working around like people they're afraid of, and especially if you have strangers trying to give treats to dogs. So we're going to look at a couple examples of this. So it's like the dog wants the treat, but they don't want to move their body toward the person, so they kind of stretch their neck out to get it. So I don't know if you'll be able to tell this because the angle's not great, but there's Pancake, and he wants that treat. Ooh, but he kind of stretches his neck to get it. This is a real common one that some of you might be familiar with, a dog who doesn't want to go in a crate. So this little guy really wants the treat, and he's willing to do behaviors to get it, stick his head in there, but he really, really doesn't want to go into the crate. And so he's doing everything he can to stretch and keep those back legs out of the crate. So definitely some conflicting motivations here, right? I want the treat, but I don't want to go where I need to go to get the treat. It's got an impressive flexibility there. Here's kind of the opposite situation. This is a fearful little puppy, and there are treats that are on the ground, and he wants them, but he's going to do his best to leave his back end in the crate because that's kind of his safety zone. So see, he stretches to get that treat, but leaves his hind end in the crate. All right, and a common one, and this actually is pretty common whether you're working with dogs and strangers or out on walks with a reactive dog. Dogs who eat and then immediately go back to some other behavior, like retreating away from a trigger or scanning the environment. This tells you the dog's doing multiple behaviors, so there must be multiple, motivations at play. So we've got a few examples of this. Again, here's this little guy. You'll notice that besides stretching to get those treats, after he gets the last treat he sees, he's going to pull back into the crate again. So doing some retreating back in. This is little Pancake early on, and he's going to come get some treats, but he's going to grab a treat and scan quickly to see if that creepy lady is gone, and then quickly go back to grab some treats. Another example of coming out of the crate to get treats, because he has to, that's where they are. If he wants them, he has to come out, but he's going to retreat back into the crate right away. So a little worried little guy. Here's Coco, who is reactive to dogs and people, out on a walk. And she is eating treats, sometimes eating them, sometimes ignoring them, and just doing a lot of scanning. So she'll look down to get a treat, but look up, look around, look behind her. So this kind of nervous scanning indicates that food is definitely not the only thing that's motivating your dog right now. All right. So these are the signs to look for if you are getting stuck with your training, your dog is taking food but still behaving aggressively or, fearfully, whatever your behaviors are that you're working on. Does anyone see any of these behaviors when you're out training with your dog? Do you think you might have some conflicting motivations going on? So how can we fix this? We could spend a long time going into detail, and we probably will go into more detail in a future session, but I didn't want to leave you guys without some practical fixes here. So one thing to do to decrease motivation to react so that you're getting less of the behavior you don't want and therefore more that you do is to just get farther away from the triggers. If you're seeing those behaviors we talked about that look a little that kind of indicate maybe there's conflict going on, if you get farther away, at least for dogs who want distance from their trigger, you can decrease the conflict. You can decrease the motivation for the reactive behavior. And then, you're not competing with that. You and your treats aren't competing with that. It makes training much more effective. It doesn't mean you have to stay far away forever, but you need to train at a place where you're not fighting so much this other motivation. You can also decrease the intensity of the trigger. This really depends on your dog, what that means. But for instance, for dogs who are reactive to other dogs, a lot of times dogs who are running around are sort of a more concerning or more intense trigger than dogs who are standing still or walking. So one thing you could do if, say, for instance, you've been setting up your training sessions outside of a dog park or something because dogs will be there, but those dogs are running around and your dog is really struggling, then it might be time to, find a different training context for now where dogs will be on leash and not moving around so much. Another thing you can do is decrease the duration of exposure to the trigger. This is actually a really common mistake I see happening a lot, where people will go to a training spot and kind of park their dog there and then try to do a bunch of practice in one location. Whereas the dog, so the dog is kind of okay in the beginning maybe, but as time goes on, they appear to be getting more and more conflicted. They really want to leave. So just doing, say, one repetition and then moving away for a while before trying again, maybe doing some easier training at a greater distance and then coming back in, that can also be a great way to make a little more progress. So don't make your dog sit and look at, their trigger for a long time. Even if it's pretty far away, that might eventually get to be too much for them. Okay, so what we've just talked about is one reason why your dog could be taking treats but still reacting or behaving aggressively. And that is that you basically have the old motivations and reinforcers in place still that sort of created and maintained your dog's problem behavior in the first place. And you've just put some new stuff on top of it. You've put the food and whatever your new behaviors you're teaching on top of it, but you still have both in play. So that's why you still have both behaviors. You've got good behavior and the behavior you don't want. Next week, we're going to talk about how you might be accidentally positively reinforcing behavior you don't want, and it's more common than you might think. And we'll talk about some fixes for that as well. And then in 2 weeks from now, I think we'll go through a case study to look at the situation where both of these things were happening and how we figured that out, and then how to start working on that. All right, so there is the Facebook support group address that if you're not in it already, you're definitely welcome to join. I'm going to look at some questions here now. Let's see. So it looks like a bunch comments of some, a few people that are having this issue. Their dogs are inconsistently taking treats, sometimes won't take treats at all. So definitely you've got motivations to do behaviors other than eating there. So that tells you that doing some troubleshooting or experimenting to find ways to decrease those competing motivations might help your training quite a bit. Let's see. Yeah, so Wendy, it sounds like, you're doing a lot of things right, but if you've got that, if you still feel like you're kind of fighting the reactivity all the time, like, can you get farther off the trail? Yeah, running away from a trigger works sometimes. Yeah, I think that can be a really nice alternative behavior for, especially for dogs who especially for dogs who want to get distance from their triggers, who are afraid of their triggers, because that just running away in and of itself can be a reinforcer. And plus, a lot of dogs just love running, so that can be a positive reinforcer as well. Donna says, positive reinforcing is making my dog control me. Do you mean they're asking for treats a lot, Donna? Dogs are always working the system. Just something to keep in mind. They notice but it's the sort of consequences that we set up, whether we do so intentionally or not. Dogs are observing us. They're always learning, which honestly a lot of the time works against us, right? Because they're learning whether or not we are intending to train. And so they do whatever works in the system that we have created. And a lot of times that's not something we like, but we're still reinforcing it. So for example, a few minutes ago, I said, just a second, I have to go put this whining dog somewhere else because there's too much background noise. That may well have been a reinforcer. Me going and giving attention to this dog, my dog, might well have been a reinforcer for whining. Even though what I did was go say, just go outside, and put him outside. Even that interaction could have been, or going outside if you wanted to go outside, could have been reinforcement for whining. And he has learned that when he hears my voice talking at the computer, he tends to get a faster response to his whining. And if anyone else has been doing a lot of Zoom work from home, you might relate to this. If you have dogs that have learned that you being on Zoom is a cue to do loud stuff, because you can't ignore it. You can't ignore it when you're on a work call. So it works quickly to get them attention. Wendy says, I also try to take a tug toy. Yeah, tug toy can be great too. Dogs who really like toys or games with toys, that can be a really nice reinforcer for behaviors you like, for sure. All right. Any other, same with kids whining? Yeah, totally. Wendy says it's the same with kids. If you're on the computer, they're whining. Yeah. And it's annoying, right? So I get annoyed a little bit when my dog Jasper starts whining when I'm on a call, but really it's my fault because I have reinforced this exact scenario. I have taught him that whining is the best behavior to use if you want quick attention when mom is on a call. So, it's not like he's trying to be annoying. He's just responding to the system that I have created in our home, unfortunately. One of many reasons why you should give your dog something else to do before you get on a call. And I thought about that. I thought, I should have given him a Kong, but I forgot. So next time, hopefully I'll remember. Goodness. Yeah, he's pretty. I wonder if I don't think I can go on camera on this slide. Okay. Any last questions before I sign off? Does anyone think you have this going on and you're still not sure what to do about it? We just talked briefly about ways to decrease the conflict so that you're not fighting it so much. Okay, I'm going to go back here. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining. It's so nice to see you, to see your comments. We'll be back next week again with we're going to be talking about how you might be accidentally reinforcing aggressive reactive behavior with positive reinforcement, which I have definitely done before. So we're going to talk about what that means, how can you tell, and then, then what do you do to fix it? All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful week. I will see you next week.